All right. Howdy, everybody. I see some similar faces from last time, including my colleague and co-facilitator, Jeff. But we'll start in a second. And I'm glad that my colleague, Steph, sorted out the technology for this second breakout session. We'll just give it a few more minutes to see who shows up. Oh, right. And just a reminder, if you can change your walkability back to your name and the community that you represent and or the organization, that would be great. So we'll have a bit of an idea of who's who. And I think we can kind of fly through some of the introductory stuff because you guys have already had that in your first session. So we can really kind of focus on the discussion. But we'll just take another minute. And please change your name from Walkability. Okay, all right. Well, why don't we hop right into it? So this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And by the way, my name is Mike Hunninghake. I am with the Environmental Finance Center at the School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation at the University of Maryland in College Park. And my colleague is...
Hello, everybody. Jeff King. I work for the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and I run the Climate, Energy, and Air program there. So glad to be part of this event tonight. Thanks, Mike.
And so in this session, we are going to be talking about how to enhance walkability and bikeability throughout the county, helping to reduce vehicle miles traveled and increasing support for concentrated activity centers or transit-oriented development. And just to emphasize, as we did in the last breakout session, we're here to listen. We want to know what your opinions are, what should be happening in your community, what ideas that you have, and how we can import those things into this climate action plan. So we can actually go to that first slide. Why don't we, Jeff? So just a quick review of the benefits of walkable and bikeable communities. We've got human health benefits in terms of air quality and reduction in stress and in quality of life. We've got environmental benefits, clearly reducing greenhouse gas and smog and particulate pollution. And there's lots of economic benefits as well in terms of reducing commuting costs and catalyzing economic growth. People have more money in their pockets and are more likely to spend it in walkable, bikeable communities that are connected by trails and transit to other places. So I think we're all who are here tonight probably get the benefits of walkable and bikeable communities. Next slide, Jeff. So this is a snapshot of some of the efforts that have already been going on in the county, some that you may know about, some as you kind of traverse those bullet points you may be hearing about for the first time. There's a Vision Zero plan in terms of zero fatalities, ongoing efforts to incorporate complete streets in land use planning so that all street users are accommodated. Ride smart solutions in terms of information about transit and carpooling and telecommuting. There's a host of apps that the county is developing in terms of Next Bus and real-time roadway conditions and the Carpool Now and ride matching. So there's a lot of different things going on at the county level. This doesn't even mention, connecting trails and some other things, the bike share programs, but there's a lot going on in this particular area, and we want to see how we can make all of these things more available and more widespread. Next slide, Jeff. So the The county's Climate Action Commission, as you heard in the last breakout session, has been working over the last 6 months to listen and learn from technical experts and community residents and county residents and other folks. And so these are the 2 recommendations that they have come up with thus far. And that is reducing vehicle miles traveled through support for teleworking and virtual convening. Obviously, we're all a heck of a lot more experienced at that than we were about a year and a half ago. And then also increasing support for activity centers. So supporting transit and walkable and bikeable communities around transit hubs and adopting strategies to bring housing and jobs to those centers in order to reduce vehicle miles traveled and consequently reduce our carbon footprint. Next slide, Jeff. So similarly, we would like you to take a minute and think about what a walkable and bikeable Prince George's County would look like in the future. You can tell us very specific things that you think would happen, or you could paint a broad picture of a specific place that you think this could happen. But who's involved and what are they doing and when is this happening and how is support being offered? So think about that for just a minute, and then we'll start our conversation. And you're welcome to, at any point during the rest of this conversation, raise your hand to tell us what you think, or type some comments in the chat box. And we will do our best to capture everything that is said or typed out tonight. So just take a minute to think about this. Okay, so please describe, what a walkability, bikeability program would look like for you to be excited about it, or what would get your neighbors and family members and friends to walk and bike more, or how to engage residents in terms of thinking about how frequently you use the car, or what might prevent you from walking or biking to destinations, or what sort of rebates or incentives. So we will go from the top, and that is the mayor of College Park. Please go right ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, I think first I think we need to start from a point of mode shift and reducing vehicle miles traveled, and see what we are, and then think and set a goal about mode shift, and then figure out what we need to do to get there. I think Mike, you mentioned trails, which is the one thing that was left off the list. I think in terms of Vision Zero is important, complete streets are important, but trails are the safest way for people to get around by walking and biking, and if we want it to be accessible for everybody, regardless of how comfortable they feel being around traffic, being on a bike lane, trails are always the best way to go. We need to have lit trails. We need to have connected trails. So they're not just trails. Trails in a watershed are great, but trails that connect people to employment centers and to residential areas and commercial centers are provide not just an amenity for recreation, but also serve a purpose for transportation as well.
Okay, I couldn't agree more, Mayor, about trails. And the county has actually got, especially in this neck of the woods, quite a few trails and quite a network that can be expanded. Okay, so in order that I'm seeing folks, Jabari, would you like to let us know what you think?
Yes. Okay. I feel like who will be involved is mostly individuals that care for the environment and want to improve the stats of our current state of the environment. And I feel like what their goals will be is to improve how our environment is right now, and they want to help others, and they want to help the environment itself to increase its negative impacts that is right now.
Okay, so sort of getting people to understand more the environmental benefits of walking and biking. Is that a good summary, kind of? Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, great. And the mayor of Cheverly, go right ahead.
Actually, I'm the former mayor of Cheverly. The
Oh.
new mayor is getting sworn in this evening.
Oh,
But
let's-
I'm here. I'm here from the Green Infrastructure
Okay.
Committee of Cheverly.
Yep.
And one of the things that I did really want to stress that I think Mayor Patrick was referencing, our residents don't feel safe getting out on the roads and bicycling, especially with their families. And we need to find ways to not just say that bikes can be in traffic lanes, because once again, it's not safe. And to rethink that process. And then there are 30% plans, 10% plans, these things out there. What I say communities really need is technical advisement on how we get from your 30% plan to the next stage, and basically somebody who will walk alongside that process for groups of individuals, for communities, so you can actually get to implementation. We have great trails, but for different communities to connect with those trails, we need a lot of help.
Okay, so connectivity is important, and also the idea of building protected bicycle facilities. Okay, James, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to see more K through 12 students having walkable and bikeable schools, just ensuring that any improvements that are made to residential areas, sidewalks are important, safe streets are important. We just heard that. Trails, connector trails, we've heard that. But just giving these students an opportunity to where they do feel safe and comfortable walking to school or biking.
Okay, great point. And safe routes to school programs are great ways to address that. And the state has a program, and the counties generally have programs that help communities do that. Okay, sorry, Kate, go right ahead, please.
Hi, thanks so much for hosting this tonight. A lot of things I was going to share have already been said, but I just want to echo the feeling safe for families. I have a almost 2-year-old, and I am very nervous walking on any major thoroughfares with him. And I have a trail a mile from my house, but I have to cross East-West Highway to get there. So it's really quite terrible and scary when I'm with my child. So safety is a big deal. Also thinking about, if we're talking about equity, where is the bicycle infrastructure? Where are the sidewalks? Are they connected? Are they also considering all users? And then another thing related to safety that does not impact me, but as we've seen in data that has been out, the enforcement of Black and Brown communities. How safe do cyclists feel who are Black and Brown, and how often are they stopped for traffic tickets or even worse? So that's another thing I think we should consider when we're talking about walkability and bikeability.
Thank you very much, Kate. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, but please, oh, sorry.
I couldn't find the hand function. I'm still looking for it.
Oh, Cheryl, go ahead. And then, yes, Cheryl, you're up next.
Okay, thank you. I'm Cheryl Corbin with Coalition for Smarter Growth, working on land use and transportation climate solutions. And I just wanted to support what Mayor Woyan said about kind of measuring vehicle miles traveled per capita to be a really important way to build solutions off of that goal, knowing that that's a major contributor to CO2 emissions. And then in terms of kind of like the kind of question around walk bike safety, so much of this has to do with how we've have traditionally built our roadways and how we need to both retrofit them to become safe for all users. And we need to, in the future, build them the right way, basically, where we're really inclusive of walking and bicycling and good transit use.
So adopting sort of complete streets policies, right?
I'd say fully funding and implementing the complete streets policy and the urban street design standards that the county adopted a couple of years ago.
And municipalities, and that's who I normally work with through the Sustainable Maryland program. We're actually adding an action this coming year about complete streets policy. So municipalities have their role to play here too.
Yeah. Can I just know something? I've been studying the recommendations, and it's sort of funny that the commission said reduce VMT through support for telework. And I thought there's a lot in between the goal of reducing VMT and telework.
I agree with you there, Cheryl. That slide is a bit right. Yes, agreed. Okay, Ms. Cook, go right ahead.
I just wanted to echo everything that everyone said and the need for a greenway, you know, just having trails that don't connect and there's no connectivity and not considering, you know, social equity and things like that is really important, especially for the economy.
Okay, thank you very much. Larry from Greenbelt, we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a specific in terms of connectivity, just being able to cross major thoroughfares in a safe manner. I work at NASA Goddard, and there is a back way out of Greenbelt to get to NASA Goddard or whatever, but if that was a plan instead of I guess a improvisation, it would be a lot better way to go and commute from my town to my work. So that's all.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? One last chance to put in your. Yes.
I had something to say.
Hold on one second. I can't tell who is speaking. Oh, someone on the phone. Go right ahead. Whoever's on the phone, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I couldn't raise my hand. I'm on the phone.
Go ahead.
But I just wanted to echo the last comment from a Southern County perspective. Living near Route 210 near Oxon Hill and Fort Washington. Route 210 is, I believe, the most dangerous highway in the county. People attempt to cross 210 on foot because they live in a food desert. There are no supermarkets nearby within walking distance. So they risk life and limb to run across 210 to go to a fast food or a gas station to buy food. And it's an extreme example of what a non-walkable community is. And I'm hoping that just issues of crossing major highways could be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, there was someone else who.
It was me. My name's Tanya Charleston. I am so glad that the phone caller got in just now. Sure. You know, I went into this break room and a break room before, and a lot of what I'm seeing, including the pretty pictures you showed, it doesn't pertain to our area. The caller mentioned 210. I'm off of 210. I'm in Accokeek, and it's a rural area. At least it was at one point in time. But now all the cross-county traffic that's coming up and down 210, it's considered a speedway now. I mean, it's literally, when you see us in the news, it's because someone's racing out there. There are no sidewalks at all that could possibly take us anywhere. Not that we have any infrastructure. I mean, the closest thing would probably be a Giant or a Safeway. And so our green gases, they've quadrupled in the last 20 years, probably even bigger than that now, because there's nothing but cars and buses and traffic, of 3 lanes of traffic coming and going all the time up that 13 miles. That's how far it extends from the tip of PG County when you cross over from Charles and you get down the road towards the National Harbor. It's nothing but a highway. And so there are no sidewalks, no trails, no bike paths, no green, whatever you want to call it. There's like nothing. I can't even foresee the pretty pictures that you showed even happening in our area. So, you know, we've got thousands and thousands of people still moving in. They're mowing down trees as we speak, just to build more and more homes and townhouses and changing the landscaping out here. So we've got all kinds of issues as far as green gases, flooding. The kids can't go anywhere outside of the community. In fact, they can barely go anywhere in the community because people speed through the communities. So, I mean, not just, you know, the caller mentioned trying to cross the highway. I wouldn't dare try to cross 210 to go anywhere, because even with the places that have sidewalks, you are going to get ran over because the cars stop in the sidewalks.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Okay, I think.
Well, hello.
Jean, is that Jean?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jean.
I don't know where I am, except I am in this residential walk, and
you're amongst friends.
Different.
Huh? You're amongst friends. Go right ahead.
Are you seeing me at all? Is the video? I don't see me at all. That's fine,
off, Jean, but you're welcome to just speak your mind. Go right ahead.
Okay. The my situation is just different from the young lady that just spoke. I'm sorry, because she's in a new area and I'm in an old kind of dead end western in a Delphi area. There's nowhere you can walk up the hill to New Hampshire Avenue, but you can't walk because we don't have any sidewalks here. We've never had it on this street. And kids, if they're walking to the bus stops, you know, they have to, a parent has to lead them, or there's just nothing that sets me into this kind of walkability or bikeability. I mean, we've always been afraid to let the kids ride bikes on the street. It's just 2 lanes with parking on either side, and it's a short street. So I don't know how we fit. I was trying to describe this earlier, to think of how this would apply to anything that we have in this area or community as such.
Well, I think you described your community quite well, and I think it could start with a very simple premise of having sidewalks so people don't have to walk in the street.
Hey, that would be so great. And a freshly tarred street.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're halfway through, a little over halfway through. We got some really great comments and ideas and suggestions here. So Jeff, I think we're going to move on to the next slide, which actually tracks with some of the things that we just talked about. But the idea is, you know, if there were to be efforts in terms of improving walkability and bikeability in your community, what are your concerns? What challenges might there be, but what opportunities might there be? So this is pretty wide ranging, I think. So again, if you can raise your hand, we'll do it that way. And okay, don't be shy. And you can put something in the chat box as well. So, you know, what are some of the concerns about more walking and biking in your community, or issues about safety, length of commute or travel times, adequate infrastructure? Those are the kinds of things we're trying to talk about here. So, okay, Kate, lack of sidewalks, speeding, so safety issues. Lighting, so in terms of safety, Tanya mentioned lighting as being a safety issue. Distance, well, so how do we make things more walkable? We are talking about concentrating development where things are already walkable, where activity center already exists. the importance of pedestrian signals that that are ignored. How do we solve that? Oh, Jabari, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
I'll say the huge amount of users of cars and automobiles. I'll say that can be a challenge.
Okay, just the sheer number of automobiles out there is a challenge. All right, good point. Oh, the idea of lighting trails so that they can be better used as commuter routes. Yeah, so like on a, say, a fall or winter evening, it's easier to use the trail if you can see where you're going. Good point. Talking about road design, right? High design speeds for roads where people are trying to walk and bike. That's definitely a challenge. We'll go back to connectivity of trails. Regional trails need to be connected, and communities need to be connected to one another, and to places to shop. So sidewalk connectivity. Another challenge that is the structure around development that builds in vehicle traffic considerations. So we shouldn't be building these communities primarily for vehicles. And an example is the redevelopment of the Beltway Plaza.
And just to add to that, I mean, I think what we see there is just that built into sort of county processes and the things we go through when we engage in major redevelopment, there's considerations for cars, and sort of pedestrian things and cyclist things, in my view, seem to be sort of second tier considerations as opposed to be elevated to the same level.
Right, absolutely. Which goes back to more of a complete streets approach. Building in reduced vehicle miles traveled in development review. All right, so going into the planning processes. Larry mentions well-identified and supported crossing points. Okay, so making our intersections more readily crossable, and so that drivers are more able to recognize people who need to get across these roads. Bike rental options between waypoints. So we haven't actually mentioned bike share at all. What about bike share? Do we need more of it? Do we have mayors here who have bike share? Would like to comment on that? Yes.
Yes, we need more of it.
All right, we need more of it.
And in more places where it's more easily accessible.
Hey, and while we're on bike share, let's throw out scooters. Those seem to have kind of dipped a little bit in the region in the last year, but I think they're kind of coming back. So do we need everything? All of the above, yeah?
If I may, there's something else that I don't think we've mentioned, and that's things like transportation demand management and other approaches that really encourage incentives for metro rail and metro bus usage, and the walkability, bikeability, and supporting shuttles for things like this. I think it's good to put it in this section because I don't think it fits into any of the other sections, or maybe it should fit in all of the sections that we're talking about.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Layla. Ms. Cook, go right ahead.
I put it in the chat room. I just wanted to say a challenge could be the impact on the environment. Like if we are adding, trails and things, what's going to happen to the environment, but then an opportunity. Is it possible to get like a HOV lane on the streets to encourage ride sharing? I'm not sure.
I think it depends on the road. So more bike share, more bike trails, more bike lanes that are separate from walking trails. Okay. Bus lanes, we've mentioned BRT or bus rapid transit. Okay. Challenges include resistance from communities to adding bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure because of the fear of increased costs or gentrification or displacement. Yes, right. Bike lanes can often be seen as the sort of tip of the spear of gentrification, for sure. Okay. Just any last comments before we move on to the next section? All right, great. Lots of good.
Hey, Mike, I just added something in the chat. Just the lack of a challenge is the lack of this lack of communication between all the different agencies that handle bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure.
Sure, lack of communication and coordination between those agencies. Absolutely, absolutely. That would certainly go a long way, especially when it comes to trails and connectivity at the regional scale. Mm-hmm. And Cheryl mentioned investing in promoting cycling for low-income residents. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you, folks. That was lots of good stuff there. So Jeff, if you want to switch us over to our next section, and we've got about 10 minutes, I think, left before we go back to the general session. So we want to talk about equity issues here, as we did in the last breakout session. So thinking about if everything goes well, who will benefit, but also who might be burdened or left out in terms of walkable, bikeable infrastructure policy improvements. How do we ensure that the most vulnerable or in need populations are served? So some of the things we've talked about address this, but let's kind of try to zero in on this equity issue.
Like, I think looking at the places that currently have the highest numbers of traffic fatalities, pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities, which tend to be more low-income communities and communities of color, and also have historically lacked investment in biking and walking infrastructure.
All right. So sorry, there's historically a lack of investment in walking and bicycling infrastructure in communities of color and low-income communities. Absolutely. So looking at where the highest incidence of chronic disease prevalence is and correlating that with existing infrastructure. Okay. Either raise your hand or put something in the chat box. Jabari, go right ahead. Please speak up.
I feel that it will mostly benefit those who do not have mobile automobiles, and it'll also impact the environment positively because there'll be less carbon emissions being released and being spread through our community.
Okay. So more people walking and cycling will result in better health outcomes in many neighborhoods. Absolutely.
This is Jean. How would these sidewalks and be managed? I mean, for cold weather, ice, who's to determine whether or not they're good for people to be out on them? Who manages something like that and determining what's available when, in wintertime or summertime or heavy traffic or nighttime, that their lights are all on and things like that. That's just the county?
Well, I guess it depends on where you live, Gene, and I'll let others jump in on that if you want. But I think it depends on whether you live in a municipality or a homeowners association or an unincorporated area. But perhaps just getting the sidewalks in is probably the most paramount thing. But yeah, maintenance, I think it depends on where you live, Gene. I'm just going to read some of the comments. So policing issues is important because making sure that people of color need to feel that they can walk safely and bike safely. Social equity, so connecting low and high income areas. Some of the benefits would include elderly folks who no longer can or want to drive, that they have safe walking trails and sidewalks that connect to everyday needs. Good point. Shared public spaces that don't require owning a car are important. Walking is a human right. I'm going to paraphrase Layla there. It's a necessary component of everyday life. Absolutely. And I think we may all have learned a little bit more about that in the last year or so. Thank you, Ms. Cook. We have not mentioned the disabled community at all. So that needs to figure in to all of these considerations about equity. So examples from the Greenbelt area, which generally has some good connectivity, but west of Kenilworth, there's a lack of bike and pedestrian planning, while Greenbelt East is somewhat connected. So you've got all ranges there. I suppose Old Greenbelt is an example of a planned community that is exceptionally walkable and has great destinations. Yes, Mayor, go right ahead.
Yeah, so looking at transportation and how it relates to affordable housing and making sure that we look at the overall cost burden for housing and transportation together, and that there's accessible ways to get to affordable housing without driving.
And if I'm not mistaken, Mayor, your municipality offers some incentives, financial incentives for people to live there in terms of walkable destinations. And I'll just throw out there's a thing called location efficient mortgages that are being done across the United States. So yeah, definite possibilities there. Student voices. Having students create a greenway plan and present it to those with power. Okay, I like that. And where do students walk? Students walk in different places than we walk on a regular basis. I'll mention that Safe Routes to School program again. That's something that any community can adopt. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have a few minutes for the last session, the last discussion. So Jeff, as you put those final thoughts down, we will transition to our final slide, where we want you to think about what success looks like in the next 3 to 5 years. And that can be infrastructure, policies or ordinances, research, anything you like. What would this successful outcome look like in the next few years? So affordable housing located in transit accessible walkable communities. So the county needs to do a better job of creating affordable housing across the board, but also in the right places. We've ran out of time slightly here, folks. I'm sorry. We're being asked to come back. Anybody have any other final thoughts before we jump back in the next minute or so? People can walk or bike anywhere. Awesome.
I think a map that gets you all the way across the county in whatever direction you need to go for whatever purpose.
A map, sort of like
map.
a map of safe pedestrian and bicycle paths and trails and networks. That would be awesome. Yes. DC's got a wonderful bike map like that. Success would look like you can walk to the grocery store and connect to trails safely. Amen. More connectivity of trails. Safe walking and biking access to every Metro and Purple Line station. Okay. Success means you won't need a car. Okay.
Redesign intersections and roadways to make them safe for walking and bicycling.
Okay. All roadways and intersections designed to be safe for walking and cycling.
Actually have destinations to walk in or bike to, because currently everyone has to jump in their car and drive over to another county just to shop.
Good point. What's walking and biking if you don't have something or somewhere to walk or bike to? And the importance of community engagement, like we're doing tonight, is paramount, right? Having these conversations at the more local level in all of your communities, that would be a sign of success, that every community is thinking and talking about this. And I'm hopeful that all of you tonight might be inspired to go back to your communities and start these conversations. So I'm just going to say thank you very much, and thank you, Jeff, for taking the notes.